Evening, everybody. Good to see you all. It's nice summer's evening. It feels like summer anyway. Technically spring, I guess, but it feels like a summer evening. Right. First of all, apologies for potential lateness from Councillor Strachan, but he assures us he's on his way. No other apologies. No. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Farrell.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just declaration.
Thank you. Right then. Mike. Oh, Mike, Kerry, Simon, perhaps.
Thank you, Chair. Just a declaration of interest as a director of LWMTS for agenda item 3.
Simon, give us a clue as to your interest.
Thank you, Chair. Same declaration for item 3, please, as a director of the board of the company.
Thank you, Eva. If any more declaration of interest arise, please just interrupt. First substantive item on the agenda tonight then is Mike, who is also going to declare an interest.
Thank you, Leader. I just wonder whether you would join me, along with the rest of Cabinet, in wishing Chase Town Football Club all the very best this evening in the Walsall Senior Cup final at Bescot Stadium against Rushall Olympic. Up the Scholars.
I'm sure we would, Councillor Wilcox, and thank you for raising such an important issue this evening. First item on the agenda then is the Disabled Facilities Grant Framework. Councillor Strachan, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry that I was slightly late.
You're pretty good, actually.
Members will obviously recall that we took the operation of the Disabled Facilities Grants fully in-house in April of last year, and that has been, at least on the stats that I've seen, an uproarious success in terms of delivery, where we've had a significant uptake. But we have been hindered by the presence of a dynamic purchasing system, which is a third-party system, and which has been making things a little bit more difficult to operate. And so, with a view to smooth out those, and also to make this service a lot easier to sell to other councils if we choose to, or sell to other providers if we choose to, I'm seeking authority tonight to start off the procurement process of developing our own framework. We've demonstrated here at Lichfield that we've managed to grasp the operation of this very well. We now need to make sure that the administration of it is fit for purpose, and this is the first step along the road to making that as good as it possibly can be. We're looking to make the framework as big as it possibly can be, which is why we do have such a very high ceiling. You'll see we're seeking a ceiling of 1 billion, which is an incredibly large amount of money, although our share of that will, of course, still be limited to the Disabled Facilities Grant pot that we have, which is a fraction of a lot less than that. It's significantly less than 1%. But this is with a view to scaling this up and spinning it up and getting it ready to go forwards. Obviously, we'll then go to the contractors who will actually do the technical work for us. But this evening, I'm just seeking your approval to get the work spun up and to approve the thrust behind it. I don't know whether any of the officers want to talk about some of the practical difficulties that we've encountered and how we intend to iron those out, or whether Councillor Farrell, who I know has had quite a lot of touch on this up to this point, would like to add anything to what I've said in opening. I'm happy to hand over.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Alex, anything you wanted to comment on that?
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, just to go on from what Councillor Strachan has said, I mean, this is an incredibly ambitious paper. I think it's worth reminding ourselves that a couple of years ago, the situation this council was in with DFGs was not good because of our former provider. Taking it in-house, the first thing we did was clear the backlog, and we cleared it very fast. And the second thing we're doing now, as Councillor Strachan has said, is moving on to look to almost sell this excellent service that we're running to other authorities, as we should be doing, because we're doing a great job at DFGs, and the team at LWMTS who are looking after this are doing fabulously. So I just think it's a really nice, ambitious paper, one I fully support as well. And I think it just shows the direction that not just the council are going, but also LWMTS in just constantly striving to be better to not only make more money for this council, but also do positive things for our residents. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. Any more? Kerry?
Just to add on to what Councillor Strachan and Councillor Farrell have said, the existing framework we are having to use is very complicated and time consuming, and also doesn't allow much flexibility for local trades and local contractors to be used as well. So we feel this is absolutely the right step in the direction, both for Lichfield District Council, but also to support other local authorities and other public sector organisations will be able to utilise this framework. The current framework is very much focused on profit rather than service focused, and the entire focus since we took DFG back in-house was on making those really important adaptations as quickly as possible and as high quality as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Right, let's go to questions. Mike?
Just an observation, really, Leader. It's certainly been noted that Lichfield have really stepped up to the plate in delivering of disabled facilities grants across Staffordshire, and I think anything whereby there's a framework where we can do more of that is really well, well sort of reported and well received. I think unfortunately we've had a history of a number of years where we weren't able to act quickly enough, and we seem to get a backlog in the number of DFGs that we had that weren't able to be delivered. And it's important that this comes in, and it's important that other local authorities have the opportunities to do that as well. So I think it's really a step in the right direction, and it's certainly noted in other places. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Indicator as well. Janice?
You did, yes. Hopefully before my laptop decides that it's not going to have any more power to it. Yeah, I too am really pleased to see this paper coming through, and especially from the aspect of being able to encourage local smaller businesses to be able to get more involved, to be able to access at all, and being able to provide such services as well. So I can see lots of benefits there, whether it's the increasing volume or even the responsiveness to some of the service requests as well. My question though is to do with the framework details. So we've got some areas that we're looking at focusing on here, and I just wondered, one that it doesn't appear to be on this particular part, and I realise that this is early days, is to do with safeguarding. So I just wondered if that would also be included in what we'll be looking at, is my first question. And then if I can come back with a second one, please.
Thank you. Rob, do you want that one?
I'm going to manfully hand this one off to Kerry, on the basis that Councillor Sylvester Hall did give me notice of the question about an hour ago, but I spent most of it in a traffic hell. So
absolutely. So all contractors will be pre-assessed to ensure that they are high quality, and that will include a range of different quality checks, including relevant accreditations and safeguarding as part of that.
That's a long way to go for the part on there. And then my second part, Leader, is in terms of the financial implications. I realise that this isn't necessarily part of the framework, but considering we're going for 1 billion as part of the limit on there, I noticed that the projection is reducing in the amount that we're actually putting through for the DFGs, and I would have thought, if anything, it would be increasing. So it's one of those questions that say curious, and is that necessarily going to be the case? Admittedly, our portion of that 1 billion is quite small, but the fact that it's reducing and not increasing, I just thought, curious.
I know that's been pulled out of Anthony's capital programme and the projections have been given by the Better Care Fund, but I don't know whether anybody has details on why they are where they are and why that taper is where it is.
The Better Care Fund, as far as I'm aware, is delegated to us by the county council. So it will be funding that we receive to then implement the DFGs. Therefore, it's something we can take up with the county council as to whether we think the money that is currently projected is adequate enough for the level of adaptations we believe there are in the district.
I'm sure we can all find some county councillors to lobby on that one.
Absolutely.
Just thank you, Joe. Before I bring Mike in, I think it'd be useful to point out at this stage that it's the first time we've ever had to worry about spending the entire DFG allowance. That's quite a nice problem to actually have. So, Mike.
Leader, I think it's probably remiss of me. I think I probably should have declared an interest that the Better Care Fund sits within my portfolio at the County Council under Health and Care.
Well remembered, Mike. Right, any more? I think my only question is really about where we've taken fairly short in a fairly short amount of time the DFGs from a position where we were never able to spend or disperse the full amount. We had people waiting over a year to get their grants awarded, and then even longer to get the actual works completed. We're in a really good place now where our residents are benefiting tangibly from the rate that we're pushing the grants through and the speed that we're able to get those works done. Are we confident that by setting up this framework and providing those services to other local authorities that we're not going to have an adverse impact on our own residents here in Lichfield?
I see a nod from my left that says that yes, we are confident that we're not going to. No, this I see as an entirely separate piece of work to the operational delivery of this. This is far more of an administrative back office, and so we'll be resourcing that appropriately and not taking from the front line.
Brilliant, thank you. In which case, I'm happy. Simon, did you want to come in, sorry, as well?
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to add to what Councillor Strachan has said is that as and when we will extend the framework further by bringing in additional suppliers. And the second point I make is that as LWM grows in confidence, we're also bringing on skills ourselves. So we've recently employed a plumber. So we believe actually that we can undertake more of the activity directly ourselves, certainly for the smaller adaptations. So in answer to your question, no, there will be no risk to our residents.
Excellent. Good to hear. Okay, in which case, Rob, back to you for your recommendation.
Thank you, Leader. I think to make the small p political point, this is far. This has really demonstrated that here locally we can do them very well and be very responsive. And this is all about resourcing that and making sure that we're able to do it and being able to take on board local suppliers and local tradespeople via a framework rather than on this semi-ad hoc way that we've been operating so far is, I think, a far safer way to carry that out as well. And I think that touches in some small way on Councillor Sylvester Hall's safeguarding point. And so, Chairman, Leader, I'm delighted to move recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 from my report.
Great, thank you. I was in favour. Brilliant, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Rob, and thank you to all the officers as well who have worked on that. That's quite an exciting piece of work, which I think reading about our own problems with disabled facility grants over the years, you realise that it really is a problem up and down the country, and hopefully we'll be able to benefit residents in other local authorities as well through using our approach. Okay, excellent. Next item on the agenda is Fleet Procurement Joint Waste Service. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. I think this is my debut, my first ever as the Cabinet member giving a report at this council. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also excited to be joined by Lizzie Barton, who joined me as the Director of Resident and Business Services. So between us, I'm sure we'll be able to answer any questions that you have. So having a reliable and trusted waste service and acknowledged by residents is one of the key milestones that any local authority strive for. One of the key components is an up-to-date, well-serviced fleet that is adaptable to change. Collecting waste is one of the statutory duties that we are required to perform, and our residents expect us to do this in the most efficient way as possible. So, colleagues, the two elements of the recommendations are as follows: that we have the commencement of a procurement through a contract hire agreement for the replacement of the vehicle fleet for the joint waste service. And secondly, once this has taken place, that a paper will be presented back to Cabinet to authorise the appointment of the supplier that's come out on top in the scoring tender process. And I'll return to this later, if I may. We presently have a fleet of 26 refuse vehicles collecting household waste made up of refuse, dry recycling and garden waste across both Lichfield and Tamworth councils, plus a street cleansing vehicle. We also collect trade waste and waste recycling for our businesses in Lichfield. Our existing arrangements are by contract hire. Following an evaluation, we have ascertained that this option should still provide the joint waste service with the most economical outcome as compared to other methods such as direct purchase, which can be found in the appendix of this report and to which has been produced by Link. On a financial basis, the new contract is anticipated to cost around 11.6 million to the Joint Waste Service, and therefore a tendering process is required under our procurement legislation and contract procedure rules. So a bit of background to the service, if I may. The existing fleet contract was for a length of 6 years and 2 months, and this was extended for a further 2 years back in April 23. This contract will cease in March 25. The new contract will be jointly hosted by us and Tamworth, and both authorities will jointly share any risks and liabilities, with the costs being based on a property count. This can obviously vary year on year, but broadly is around 60-40 split, with us bearing the largest cost. Colleagues, you will see in section 3.4 the criteria that will be used in choosing the right company to deliver the new fleet, making sure that pricing, quality of service and social values are met. At 3.5 of this report, it talks about the report from the Link Group that was completed in March 22, which concludes that the best option was a contract agreement which gave the council a better degree of certainty of costs over each of the respective retention terms, transferring many of the risks of ownership to the lessor. It was noted within the Link report that under certain scenarios, it is possible to draw a conclusion that the council could save money by purchasing the required number of vehicles. However, the flexing of the input variables to such an extent carries the risk for the council. Of far greater certainty from the appraisals is the identification that contract hiring the assets over the longest retention term, in this case 7 years, represents the best value for this council. One of the other important factors to consider is that under this agreement, the supplier will be responsible for providing maintenance of the vehicles at a relatively modest fixed monthly cost, which is paid during the duration of the contract. In a nutshell, the supplier takes on the risks associated with financing and maintaining the vehicles, plus their disposal at the end of the contract. We also mentioned in 3.8 that we hope that with any contract awarded will, of course, tie us into the number of vehicles for the duration of the contract. However, they're hopeful that there'll be some flexibility to increase or decrease the number of vehicles required, as circumstances will change, either around housing growth or variations to residents' habits or legislation. For example, the collection of food waste coming in may have an impact on the number of vehicles we require moving forward. It's important, colleagues, that when we enter into any new contract agreement, that the technology is there to complement the service, and systems such as the new round management and CCTV cameras and other telemetry equipment is in place, which will be maintained by the supplier of the new fleet. At 3.10, you can see that any new contract will be for a period of 7 years, with an option to extend for a further 7 years, subject to cabinet approval. This initial 7-year period represents the best financial value to this council. Under alternative options, the council could consider a number of variations for sourcing or funding the vehicles, together with maintenance arrangements, and these are set out at the bottom of page 3 of your papers and listed 1 to 3, which I'll come back to shortly. At 3.12 to 3.14.4, you will see the implications involved in the announcement by DEFRA, Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Officers have begun working on the announcement of DEFRA around the proposals to begin to collect food waste weekly from April 2026, and which includes the rationale for not including food waste vehicles in this procurement exercise. Contained within these paragraphs is what the implications are for this council and the interim steps we are taking in preparation of this new food waste collection service. One of the reasons not to include is the fact that DEFRA have provided the full capital budget to outright purchase the vehicles. We will just need to make arrangements at the point of purchase for any maintenance arrangements. To be absolutely clear, this paper is solely looking at the procurement of our existing household waste collection fleet. Turning to the alternative options, Chair, there are 3 that could be considered, which are listed in our papers. Under consultation, we have engaged with frontline staff and have had recent trials of a variety of vehicles to see which suits our requirements best. Consultation with vehicle suppliers to see what the market has to offer. And of course, we've engaged with our partners, Tamworth, in the Joint Waste Service. In summary, the total costs are split and shared, with us at 60% and Tamworth at 40%. The anticipated cost to the Joint Waste Service is 11.6 million over the 7 years. Cost per year to the Joint Waste Service is estimated at 1.66 million. Cost for any extension past the 7 years is not known at present time. The budgeted position is shown at the top of page 6, given the approved MTFS position and the split of costs between Tamworth and ourselves. Importantly, colleagues, under contribution to deliver our strategic plan, we will create the greenest district through an increase in recycling, given that we're about to relaunch our new recycling campaign in local schools, and we're achieving to try and hit a target of 65%, and at the same time reducing overall waste. Under the environmental impact, a new replacement fleet will support creating greener communities. New vehicles will achieve lower carbon due to a more modern and cleaner engines and increased fuel economy. And importantly, and to watch this space, the vehicles will have the ability to run on hydro-treated vegetable oil, or HVO, a paper I hope to bring to Cabinet shortly. This is a stage in a transformation to an alternative fuel fleet. Leader, I'll now stop and ask for any questions before I return to the recommendation at 2.1 on the first page of this paper. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And what a debut that was. Let us go to questions.
Let's read better.
Janice.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of questions, if I can, on the how we've arrived at the decision for what we're looking at and the financing model going forwards, and then a couple of questions as well on the actual logistical side of things, the practical delivery of the service. With regards to the reference to a local council and their experience helping to determine which is the best method for us to go down, has that assumption been made from the soft marketing that's being done? So we would experience the same challenges potentially with regards to accessing maintenance, that type of thing? How have we drawn that conclusion based on our neighbouring council is the first question, if I can, please.
I think it's fair to say that we have been engaging with quite a few authorities within Staffordshire and outside to see how that operates. And it's clear from us that it is important, the maintenance side of the contract, to make sure that the vehicles are well maintained and kept. So as far as that's concerned, we'll continue to have that dialogue with those organisations to see what's the best way to go forward. But that is the data that we've received so far in coming to the conclusion that we have done.
Okay, so I think that's an ongoing process in effect as well. Okay, so next couple of questions then with regards to the practical delivery of it. Has there been any option to look at maybe getting in a couple of EV type vehicles on those routes where it would be more practical for them to be able to be used as an option? And there's another curious one that I've heard mentioned is, do the vehicles need to be separate? Can we actually combine some of the purposes for those? If I take those two.
Yeah, sure. I mean, simply put, the cost of electric vehicles is far greater than the budget that we have to do. The problem we have at the moment is the depot isn't geared up for electric vehicles as such. We've got a couple of smaller vehicles that we are able to charge at the site, but the infrastructure is not in place. And therefore, we need to do an appraisal to see whether or not the first step would to be whether we can actually electrify the depot. Because if that's not an option, then we have to really just seriously think about it. But I think going down the road, I think will be a time when we will need to move to a different type of fleet, whether that's hydrogen or whether that's electric vehicles. But at this moment in time, the only option we have is to fueling through diesel engines. In relation to having a vehicle that does both, I understand there are vehicles around that you can have an attachment on that will collect food as well as refuse. I think the issues there will be, and again, it's part of the exploratory work that we're doing, is that is there any chance of contamination? It completely would rule out us taking that load back to the biodegradable digester system. So I think whilst there are lorries that do that, I think the likelihood probably from experience that we're here, but it's probably to have separate vehicles to want to do the food and separate one to do the rest of the waste that we do.
And then my last one, please, if I can, just to follow on from, I think what you were mentioning earlier on with regards to HVOs, that's something that you're going to be looking at and coming back to us with regards to the calculations and things for that.
I mean, like anything, everything comes at a cost, and there will be a cost for us to convert to HVO. And it's really a sticking plaster, in all fairness. But what it will do, as the largest carbon footprint we have is in the depot, anything we can do to reduce that carbon footprint, I think we need to consider. So hopefully, shortly, we will be bringing a paper to Cabinet, looking at going down the route of converting to HVO. The important thing to remember is that there's nothing actually that we need to do to the actual vehicles. It's just quite simply, we just change the fueling type. Also, Staffordshire Waste Partnership are looking at the potential of buying in bulk hydrated vegetable oil, because many authorities already use that in Staffordshire. So there might be an opportunity to get it at a cheaper rate, potentially through the Waste Partnership. But certainly that is the way we need to go. But there will be a cost to the authority in order to convert to HVO.
Does that answer your questions? Yeah, brilliant. Andy.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Janice pretty much covered all the bits I want to cover. Just on the EV side, very quickly. Obviously, when we're replacing the fleet, it's a good question of Janice's. I know you looked into it as well, Mike. Obviously, it's a good point to say, well, should we be looking at EV vehicles? And I understand the concept of the technology probably isn't quite there yet for the large vehicles we need and the range we need for our the size of our district. However, I'm aware that we are looking at, and this may be a separate point, and tell me if that's correct, we are looking at the food waste collections in the next however many years. And I'm guessing they're smaller vehicles, I'm assuming, or should be in theory smaller vehicles. Is that something we can look at for EV on those smaller food waste collection vehicles when we come to purchase those, do you think?
I think the simple answer is probably not, no, because I don't think we've got the infrastructure at the depot to be able to charge these vehicles. That's the problem. Even the waste collecting vehicles, it's something we're looking into, but I couldn't say at this moment in time that we'd be able to do the electrification of the food waste vehicles. I think probably the money that we've had from central government only just covers the cost of purchasing vehicles that are sort of diesel run, not electric vehicles.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry, if I could do one more, please, Doug. And I may have missed this in the report and your excellent intro, Mike. Just in terms of the length of when would we be looking at how many years until we'd have to look at replacing the fleet again, i.e. when we can revisit the EV concept on the fleet?
So the contract is from 2025, and then we have a 7-year contract. So 2032 would be the first opportunity, whether to either extend the existing contract or look potentially to other sources of fueling the vehicles. So it's a 7-year contract initially.
Lizzie?
I would add in that given that it's a contract hire proposal, there is the possibility of, whilst we need to retain the number of vehicles, there is the possibility of looking at alternative vehicles during the duration of that contract, and that potentially can be looked at. So there's a possibility that the EV could be looked at within that time period.
Brilliant. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more? Rob?
I think most of what I was going to ask or say has been covered off, but just to give you some support, Mike, some members I know measure time served by council terms. I think I've started measuring mine by waste fleets. This is, I think, my third. And I remember when I was chairing scrutiny, signing off the process with the last contract hire, and it was very obvious that was by far and away the best and most effective way of delivering a waste fleet. So I'm glad to see that's continued. And on cost and your guide prices, I'm also pleased to see some soft market testing having already taken place, because this is one of the single biggest procurement exercises that we carry out. And it's good to see that prep has already taken place. I was going to say, and I think you've covered it admirably in your answer to Mike and Lizzie, I think you picked up as well. The 7-year contract period taking us through to 2032 hopefully gives us time for those alternative fuels to be bedded in, for there to be an established market leader emerging, and for us to fit our depot, wherever that may be, if we keep the same place or if we move, to be fit for purpose for the next waste fleet, which is likely to be entirely alternative fueled, given that 2032 is 2 years beyond the current phasing out of all diesel and petrol vehicles. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that come forward, and I'm pleased to see there is an opportunity to potentially replace vehicles with alternative fuels over the life of the contract if that's appropriate. I was going to ask what the cost would be for HVO. I don't know whether you've got any early indications. You said it's a sticking plaster. I suspect it's going to be an expensive one, but also it's something that we must do. So I'm hoping that we can get some early eyes on that.
I think one of the things to remember is that the depot where it's sited at the moment is almost at capacity. The fact that we've got to find more room for food waste vehicles is going to put a strain on, and that may well come into the discussions that we have when we're looking at whether or not the site can be electrified in order to have a fleet. So I think those are some of the questions we need to look at when we're actually revisiting and looking at where the site is based. I think in relation to the contract that we're coming out of now, there was a question asked whether we could continue and extend the contract again. But our suppliers have said that really isn't the case, because the vehicles are really at the end of their life now. So that's not an opportunity for us to look at. Hence the fact that we're bringing this paper to be able to start the procurement now in time for 2025 to replace the fleet. Also, we want to take the opportunity to rebrand, and hopefully rebrand with all the recycling campaigns that we're doing now around the schools will be an element that will go on, albeit we want to try and rebrand the existing vehicles we have, albeit we don't want to spend a lot of money on that rebranding, because these are vehicles that have come to the end of their time. In relation to HVO, the indication we have at ballpark figures between 80 to 100,000 pounds. Thank you, Chair.
Any more? No. Just a couple from me then, Mike. Where we have the breakdown of the scoring mechanism, where we say 60% price, 30% quality questionnaire, including social value, and then social value 10%. Is that a typo? Okay. Sorry. I was that's fine. So is that quality questionnaire 30% and then social value 10%? Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Well, we are very just making sure that we weren't going to throw off the score by someone saying, yeah, okay, that's fine, brilliant. Then my other question was around the nature of the term of the lease. So it's on a 7+7 at the moment, as I understand it. It seems unusual. Rob will tell me this because he's done far more fleet procurements than I have, clearly. Where we say 7+7, would we not do a 7+3 or a 7+4 rather than, it feels like at the end of a 7-year term, you're deciding either to cut it there or go in for another 7 years, which feels like you'd probably be stretching the fleet at the back end of those 7 years. Whereas instead of going for a 7+3, which feels slightly more doable.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the point that Lizzie made earlier about the ability during the course of the contract, because of the way that we're contracting the vehicles, is to replace them. So actually, it could be that you replace vehicles in year 6 and you get another 7 years on top of that, rather than a 14-year-old vehicle, if that makes sense.
Yep, I'll be guided by you on that. As I say, I am not a fleet procurement expert. I'm just making sure we've got that flexibility built in. Super. Okay. Right. No more questions then, in which case, Mike, back to you for your recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. So the recommendations are the commencement of the procurement of a contract hire agreement for the replacement of the vehicle fleet for the Joint Waste Service. And as soon as a full evaluation of the proposed procurement documentation is completed, a paper is presented to allow Cabinet to authorise the appointment of the supplier that provided the highest scoring tender. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that. And again, thank you to your officers for your support on that. That brings this meeting to a close at 6:35.